serious people of Reddit who have gone through or are going through cancer. What was the first sign that made you go to the doctor? I felt a pop in my back. It was actually a vertebra breaking. I had severe pain after, and was later diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a blood cancer. That was 5 years ago. And today I am in remission. Yay. Congrats. Laughing face. Glad to hear it. The remission, that is. My mom has had, yes, lots of back pain. She beat into remission 5 years ago. It came back about 18 months ago. She's now beaten it back to a .01 score. I had what I thought was a stroke and found out I have a glioblastoma. I was given 12 to 15 months and so far I've made it to the 15th month. Stay strong, my dude. My grandma was given 6 months for her lymphoma around the time I was born. Nearly 29 years ago. I had coffee with her on Friday. Keep going. Keep it up, brother. My self-diagnosed IBS was actually a tumor and it hemorrhaged. Stage 4 rectal cancer. I beat that, but it is in my liver now, too big to operate. I am living my best life while I can. Man, I wish you good luck. I also diagnosed myself with IBS. What were your symptoms before the blood? Doctors won't listen to my concern for this. I'm a woman. They send me to the gyno to get shamed for not using birth control. I feel like I keep complaining of stomach issues and they won't do anything weary. PSA, unintended weight loss or finding blood where you normally wouldn't. Get yourself to a doctor. What is it about tumors that causes these two symptoms? I had a persistent pain in the middle of my sternum. Doctors thought it was costochondritis, essentially just inflammation of a joint. I stopped working out and lifting heavy things for 3 months, but it didn't go away. Eventually I started having night sweats and random aches. After I fractured my hip, I got an MRI and biopsy and they diagnosed me with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I got chemo and I've been in remission for 5 years. Edit. I'm seeing a lot of people describing a similar chest pain and getting scared. Not all chest pain is cancer and not all cancer is chest pain. I felt the pain in my chest because my tumor happened to be growing there. It could just as easily have grown somewhere else. And my story might have started with describing a persistent pain in the middle of my shin. If you're worried about something, talk to your doctor. My dad went to the ER after a big bump had formed on his neck overnight. He was prescribed severe rash medication but went back after nothing had worked. Everyone, even the doctors, thought it had been an allergic reaction or some kind of rash, but after testing for other causes, they found that he had Hodgkin's lymphoma and a 6-inch mass in his chest. It has been over a year. He has finished treatment, and the cancer shows no sign of returning. Edit. Thank you all so much for all the kind words and support. Seizures. I got seizures out of nowhere during the night. No history of seizures in my family. Got my head screened and they found what they thought to be a benign tumor. Anaplastic astrocytoma. Diagnosed 2 months before my 22nd birthday. Nearing the 5-year mark, though, with no evidence of it returning. My dad had anaplastic astrocytoma and ended up seizing while in a bee suit in the middle of a parade, so that was awkward. Edit. Clarity. My 33-year-old husband was diagnosed with inoperable glioblastoma, most aggressive brain cancer, in January 2019, when he was 31. What caused him to get a check was persistent headache that didn't go away with paracetamols and sleep. We discovered the tumors after taking an MRI. Needless to say, our lives were changed forever. Now we're at the end of our journey, and it's been a harrowing experience for me as his wife and caregiver. It's a lonely journey. I don't wish it upon anyone, and no one has any idea what glioblastoma is like, unless they have gone through it. The median survival time is 14 to 18 months. We're on our 18th month now, and given days, weeks left. Every day is a gift. And I'm glad I get to be holding his hands every day. Even if he's resting and sleeping most of the time. As long as he is not in pain. And that the morphine patches are working. That is fine by me. I can't handle him going through any more pain. Edit. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Giving me strength and support. And I'm so blessed to even be receiving all of your kindness. It's such a touchy subject and I'm hurt all the time. But you guys being so kind really makes me cry happy tears. I'm so touched. I don't know how to describe it, but I feel a little bit lifted. And that's more than I can ask for. From the internet, my husband, Victor, would have been so grateful to know that he is loved and supported by more people than he thought he was. Thank you, heart. My dad was in bed one night and said he felt like he was drowning, then began coughing up blood. That's terrifying. What kind of cancer did he have? I think what freaks me out the most is coughing up blood. Or really, blood coming from anywhere other than cuts or scabs. I throw up seeing a large amount of blood. It's just EHCK. I was 17, getting ready for spring break back in 2010. Was making plans with my boyfriend on the phone because we were going to take his brothers to the zoo in a different city. Literally in seconds there's this big translucent blind spot in my eye that is orange. I can see dark shapes behind it, but it's super blurry. I figured I would just go to the eye doctor before I left the next day. But my sister, who actually works for the cancer center in my city, told me that I should go to the hospital because anything weird with your vision can be super serious. After 36 hours of emergency waits, driving to specialists, they finally admitted me to the eye ward for a bacterial infection. Then they took my blood for a routine blood test. Within an hour or so, as I was getting ready to sleep, a doctor and nurse come in. The nurse has a box of tissues. The doctor told me my blood is leukemic, to which I asked, okay, can I treat that? He was extremely unclear on what was happening. I was 17. My family had already left, and I had no idea about any cancers. I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia and started chemo that night after being transferred to a different hospital. They did a bone marrow biopsy the next morning and then sent it to a genetic lab in another province. When the test results came back, they changed my diagnosis to chronic myelogenous leukemia in the last phase crisis, final stage. That was caused by the Philadelphia chromosome, where chromosomes 9 and 22 switch places in. Causes a mutation in my red blood cells. Told me I was the youngest person in the world with it. As CML usually takes a very long time to progress and the final stage doesn't show until around 65 years of age. That change in diagnosis changed my timeline. They had originally said 6 months to a year untreated, but now it was 1 to 3 months if I didn't get a stem cell transplant or bone marrow transplant. All this because I had blood clots happening all over my body because of the abnormalities of my red blood cell shapes, and the one in my eye presented itself in my vision since the vessels are so small. Edit. I guess I never finished off. I just celebrated 10 years in remission on June 17th this year and I'm healthy. My sister ended up being a 10 out of 10 DNA marker match and I was able to get a stem cell transplant on June 17, 2010. Still immunocompromised and taking dasatinib everyday chemo pill, but able to live my life. COVID has been really worrisome for me, but I'm just trying to be as careful as possible. Thanks for all the comments. And P.S. I'm a female. The boyfriend was extremely supportive for a teenager and we were together for 7 years before we parted ways mutually. Last year, March 2019, I, male, 35, woke up in the morning to go to the toilet. I was urinating pure, thick blood with little lumps in it. So after a severe panic attack, it began to hurt like hell. I was throwing up from the pain. After a day in the hospital and some scans and tests later, They told me to call my parents. So you know you were getting some bad news. It turns out it was kidney cancer. They removed my right kidney. Fortunately, no other treatments were needed. And I'm living the best life right now. If the tumor in my kidney didn't started to bleed, I would have found out much later. Probably too late. My brother was 11 when he started experiencing symptoms. He started losing a lot of weight, and when he was playing soccer it looked like he was running through mud and couldn't keep up with everyone else. My parents took him to the pediatrician and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. One day, he woke up and couldn't stop throwing up. When he tried to run to the bathroom, he kept running into the door frame and couldn't walk straight. He said the lights were giving him a headache. We took him to the emergency room and they found that he had a brain tumor and had emergency brain surgery the next day. We were extremely lucky that they decided to do a CAT scan at the ER. Apparently they don't usually do them on kids. 2 brain surgeries in a year and a half of chemo later. And he is in remission now. I went to my GP for blood in my stool, but they didn't give me any exam and presumed it was a fissure, but tear from straining. I also had side pain and again wasn't looked into, and I had fatigue. Doctors again didn't investigate. They told me as I'm young, 27, and I didn't have a family history, that it wasn't a problem. One day I was at work. I had agony in my abdomen. My manager said I was pale. Went A&E. Was kept in overnight and turned out I have a very rare stage 4 bowel cancer which has spread to elsewhere in my body. Got my diagnosis a week later and was on the operating table to remove a large part of my colon the following Monday. Now on chemotherapy and tried to complain about my GP and they removed my review from their website. NHS Choices. Edit. Hey. So chemo took it out of me after I posted this, and yikes, it's blown up, but I'm happy that in some way, my comment may help others. Therefore I wanted to clear some things up that have been asked both in comments and direct messages. The amount of blood was probably about a teaspoon worth of fresh blood on top, partially incorporated into my stool, and was happening every time. The reason was I had 2 tumors inside my bowel. One at each end, and as my stool was pushed through it, I guess it knocked them, causing the bleeding. The stool pushing against my tumors were the reason that I had the back pain. As a few of you have figured out, I'm UK based and therefore left my review both of Google as well as the NHS Choices website, and did receive an email when my review was taken down from NHS Choices, which is a website specifically to review GPs in hospitals. I've worked in a GP and the GP practice have the ability to remove the complaint. I received an email informing me of the review being taken down and a request to speak to the practice manager. I was forced to leave that GP practice, as although I've moved closer to them in the hospital I'm being treated at, they said I'm not in their area, so I was forced to move GP by them despite moving closer. Before I left, I also used the Patient Access app the NHS has and looked at my record and saw that my previous records at the GP did not record a lot of information that we discussed on my record. I've not pursued legal action. My diagnosis was almost a year ago now, and as stated, I underwent urgent surgery at that time. After recovering from surgery, I was started on chemotherapy and have been having it for months with a welcome break at Christmas. I have considered taking it further. My mum considered it when this all happened, but it wasn't materialized. As per some comments, I will investigate into this via legal advice subreddits as well as speaking to the CQC. P.S. Thanks for the award, kind stranger. Hopefully it will make this be seen and help others who might be in a similar situation and make them get themselves checked out. I was about 12 and I noticed a gray spot in my left eye, so I went to the eye doctor. It turned out to be retinoblastoma. And fast forward about 1 week, I had my eye removed and started chemo. and now have a glass eye that has to get redone every 2 years until I was 16. Was it a small opaque spot or more of a translucent patch? If you remember, I have the faintest gray patch in my left eye's periphery and am on the verge of making an eye appointment. Lol. On Christmas Eve 2018, my dad lost the ability to talk except for the phrase "this is crazy." Called paramedics because we thought he'd had a stroke. Got him to the hospital where the imaging showed a brain tumor on the outside edge of his brain. The swelling caused him to have a seizure. He was transferred to a bigger local hospital. They did full body scans because it's pretty rare to just have brain cancer. Usually it's a secondary for another cancer site. We got lucky in that it was the sole spot. Went through a craniotomy and 5 rounds of high-dose inpatient chemo. And he's 1 year in remission. Thanks for the awards. Super heavy periods that would last for 10 or more days. Got an IUD to help control bleeding. Actually hemorrhaged so bad the IUD came out. Endometrial cancer. Huge tumor in my uterus. Ladies, it's not normal to need a tampon and pad at the same time. It's not normal to need to change them every 10 minutes or even every hour. An average period is 2 to 3 tablespoons. Just for reference. Sorry if TMI. Edited to add thank you for the well wishes. I am 1 year Ned. No evidence of disease. I was diagnosed at 40. I wish I could respond to everyone. The main takeaway is if something is not right, keep looking for answers in the right physician. Heavy periods do not usually mean cancer in premenopausal women, but there is no reason to suffer through them. Postmenopausal women should not experience any bleeding. 1 drop and you should go to the doctor right away. Funnily enough, it was a totally unrelated lump. Nope, that lump is fine, just a lipoma. However, we found another lump in the corner of your x-ray and we need to biopsy it. My mom had something pretty close to this. Had a stroke, so lots of scans. One of them just caught the edge of something. Tennis ball-sized mass in her chest. Whack. Turned out it wasn't anything particularly nasty, but it seemed crazy she never knew it was there. I'll start. Smallish. Super itchy freckle on my cheek. Melanoma. All good now. Edit. I forgot to mention it was not symmetrical. That is a sign as well. Reading this made all of the freckles on my face itch. Glad you're good now. I had childhood leukemia. When I was about 10, both of my knees started to hurt progressively more and more to the point where I was limping around. I also couldn't catch my breath. I remember this one lunch lady at school giving me S for being slow walking up some stairs, and I just didn't know what to tell her because I couldn't go any faster. I went to the doctor once and they said I sprained my knees. I played soccer so it wasn't impossible. But they never got better. So I went back and they decided to take some blood tests just in case. Thankfully they did, because it turns out my red blood cells were 1/3 what they were supposed to be. Hence why I couldn't heal and I couldn't get enough oxygen. Ever. That was 20 years ago now and I got lucky. I didn't relapse. I had friends who did. And didn't make it. IDK. Kinda personal story that I don't talk about much. Edit. A lot of people have seen this and shared some great, oddly similar stories. Hope everyone is taking care of themselves. But to answer a recurring question, I never did see that lunch lady again. She was gone. Unrelated reasons by the time I went back to school. Another edit. I also don't blame my pediatrician for not catching it sooner. And I did end up having an incredible medical team providing treatment for me every step of the way. I was diagnosed at 43. For 2 years my gynecologist insisted that I get a mammogram as part of turning 40. I am very small-chested, so I thought it was a complete waste of time. In February 2013 I promised my doctor that I would get a mammogram before my next annual appointment. I was diagnosed in February 2014. Stage 2 breast cancer. There was absolutely no signs or indication. No family history. All the way up to the pathology results from the biopsy. I thought it was all a complete waste of time and money. The results came back positive.